Okay, and the last presentation of this panel will be identifying patterns of scholarly and scientific communication through the prism of citation analysis. So that's a different take on how to communicate knowledge from the research community. So citation analysis has been long used as a method in order to identify patterns and how research is communicated and transfused within the academic community throughout disciplines. And more than half a century ago, so more than 50 years ago, one of the main contributors of the application of citation analysis and communications in research was Dr. Eugene Garfield, that implemented certain notions that coexisted about diffusion of knowledge within the scientific community. So what Dr. Eugene Garfield did was founded the Institute for Scientific Information, and he began his contributions by studying how knowledge is adapted within the research scientific community by various researchers, and essentially identifying what is the most important scientific journals that researchers publish their findings in. And today, as Dr. Eugene Garfield has passed away recently, we stand here with the responsibility towards the scientific community in order to continue his legacy and have mind on how we can best help the research and scientific community in order to make their knowledge, the knowledge that they publish, more visible, more global, and in hope that their research will generate more impactful research. So, and in this way, they will help their institutions enhance their research performance and also contribute to the advancement and betterment of the society as a whole. So the notion that we're using in order to identify how research is diffused within the scientific landscape comes from the basic notion that one researcher, when they publish their studying, that they're using research that has been already produced by other researchers, and they cite their works via the citations. So this is a process that can travel us backwards to the history to identify evolution of science, the origins of very, very important literature and work, but also be able to see forward by the number of citations that we receive in order to understand how our research is being used by other academics or by other scientists that maybe perhaps work in the industry. And identify patterns between scientific knowledge published in papers, but also in the industry and IP and science world. So briefly, some of his contributions was that he proposed the utility of the citation index, so essentially a place where offers a new approach to subject control on what is out there, the literature of science, and he described that as the association of ideas. So when some knowledge is produced, then other people are using this knowledge, and there is an association between these two pieces of work, and there is some topical theme related to that. Next, he used the citation data to build a computer construction of historical networks and diagrams to evaluate the impact of individual scientific discoveries, and he called that a critical path method. And he developed a computer-based system for automatically classifying scientific articles to define clusters and groups of knowledge depending on when they were where they were cited and how they are being cited. And of course, all these derivatives and all of these methods have been adapted the past decades in something quite important that at the national level and at the institutional institutional level, throughout the stakeholders, such as research policymakers, institutions, and researchers, to use citation analysis in order to rate scientific performance or evaluation of research. There are many, many ways that these methods have been applied in order to understand how science is diffused within the academic community. And one of the methods that I think is worth mentioning is visualizations, which are very, very user-friendly, and we can understand. Visualizations are very important for us to understand where certain trends gather. So Katie Borner here from University of Indiana is a leader in visualizing science and what we know and how science is diffused in a fast-changing world, and she builds a lot of maps, not only using data and citation analysis that are coming from databases, but also using various scholar and scientific links and different types of data, such as research data, Wikipedia, crawling the web, in order to understand the data that are produced by scientists as a whole, so different research outputs. Another application of citation analysis in order to understand where groups of very, very important research work can be found, and we can use that to identify emerging and cutting-edge technologies and leading research that is formed recently or very, very recently, is co-citation analysis. And here we can see Henry Small, which introduced co-citation analysis in the early 70s, where the notion of co-citation analysis is the following very, very simply. When you have a paper, two papers, that they are both cited, they are found in the cited references of another paper, that means that there is a topical association between these two. So this is the assumption. And when we have a group of papers that are co-cited together, so they're found together in the cited references, the bibliography of a lot of different papers, then we say that these papers form a group, a core paper, set of papers in a specific thematic top, so not in disciplines anymore, but specific research topics that form a research front. And when these papers, the core, are very important papers, so papers that have made it to the top 1%, then we can say, or highly cited papers, then we can say that these are groups of published research that can inform us on what are the most important and emerging topics within the academic community today. There was an extensive reference in the first part of the session on the rise of open access. So since 2000, there has been a very rapid growth in the publication behavior of researchers globally, worldwide, which has been adopted by funders and funding mandates as well. So some funders have been mandating open access in order to receive a fund. That's part of open science, science for the people. And it has been by a study that was produced by Impact Story. It is predicted that by the year 2040, everything that we publish will be in open access sources. So everything will be publicly available. Now, how will will improve the visibility of our research? Yes, the answer is yes, based on empirical studies. So research that is published in open access journals has a citation advantage, so it's open, available, and researchers are using it more and more. So it's being used to communicate, let's say, research findings more easily. However, there are certain limitations and challenges in the patterns of scholarly communication today, and one of them is reproducibility in science, in the movement of open access particularly. So there is a lot of concern about the research that is published, and perhaps in very important journals as well, how valid it is and how reproducible science can be. There's an article in Nature based on a survey of more than 1,500 researchers in various disciplines, showing that there is a reproducibility crisis, as many of the researchers cannot reproduce the same results in their studies. So some of the main research areas that have failed to reproduce their studies are chemistry, biology, so life sciences, clinical medicine, STEM categories, research areas, and they cannot reproduce not only somebody else's studies, but their own studies. Certain factors that have been identified in the irreproducible research, and the most important one is selective reporting, pressure to publish, low statistical power or poor analysis, not replicated enough in the actual original lab, insufficient mentoring methods, poor design of the research, and also raw data are not available to the original lab. So our contribution as a data provider, Clarivate Analytics, is to help researchers towards this movement and enable them to be able to reproduce certain data for their own studies. So what we are doing is engaging with the academic community, giving away certain opening data from our own platform. And what we have done is we have worked with European researchers to form a data set in astrophysics by more than 50 important journals, 100,000 records, more than that, for researchers to be able to use the same data set to test computer algorithms, to test their own science and test different indicators to get, but using a stable data set. Also, something that we've done very recently, the previous week actually, was we ran a workshop in one of the premier conferences in scientometrics and bibliometrics, the ISSI, which happened in Wuhan, China, 1 week ago, and we co-presented with various key stakeholders that are leaders in reproducibility, such as DZHW in Germany, San Francisco, University Katie Borner, University of Leiden, CWTS, and so on and so forth. Another very important aspect that is growing is the partnership in terms of knowledge transfer in the published scientific research and the work that is done by the industry expert. So there's a lot of collaborations that are increasing and they're growing between countries and institutions, between the industry, as the industry funds a lot of some of the research that is done in university, and also opens researchers to participate in their own programs, as perhaps they're a little bit busy with producing products or drugs, and they give some of the methodologies for researchers to test, and they publish openly in some of the journals. And again, is there evidence, which is very important, that there's a return of investment, of innovations linked to academic research? And the answer is yes. There is definite evidence. There were various studies that have analyzed this subject, and in the USA, 10% of products and processes from the industry wouldn't have happened, or there would have been a substantial delay in the absence of academics and the research. Similar results for Germany as well, also impact in sales and costs, and in Denmark, which is heavily producing and combining innovation with research publication, larger amounts, more than around 1/3 of products and 20% of the processes would have significantly delayed or not being able in the absence of academic research. So innovation is closely related to publications and how research is communicated through the academic world. And also there are certain STI indicators, science and technology indicators, that are being developed and applied in order to define one piece of innovation. Of course, there are many, many ways to measure innovation, but one of them is citation analysis and analyzing the patent-to-patent citation links, and also patents to literature citation in order to understand technology and the relationship between technology and research. And these are some of the indicators that are also used for an innovative ranking, which is produced by Reuters, which presents and uses these indicators in order to present which are the most innovative universities around the world. So they have a strong relation with industry and academic world. So patents are very, very important for researchers. But do researchers use patents and cite patents? So can they be reflected in the patterns of scholarly communication? So again, there are many studies. I would like to share some of the findings with you. So in the US, Dr. Bardeen has produced this study when he was focusing on the waste of valuable technological information in US patents. So, so he performed his own piece of studies in order to study how much technology that is found in patents are actually reported in non-patent content in the literature. And his conclusions was that 80% of the patents are not included in the non-patent publication. So it is very difficult to identify what is the relation. So there's a lot of information hidden in patents for the researcher. So why are patents so important technological resource for researchers? So it is accepted that approximately, again, as we said, 80% of STI information is available only through patent publication. So it is important that perhaps this behavior should be taken into account, and patents, when particularly STI research is produced and published. And here's just a reference. Of course, I'm not going to go through all of it. Some of the indicators that are patent-based and some of their meanings that are used in order to identify innovators in the global landscape. And as you can see, there are not only patent indicators, but also they connect the publication in scientific journals with patents. So for example, patent success here is the ratio of patent applications to grants, so funding over the assessed time window. So, and it indicates a success of a university to filing applications which are accepted. So there are major challenges that innovators and researchers, and both of them, when they're collaborating, that face. There's challenges, but also opportunities to be discovered within this collaboration within the scientific landscape. So first of all, the data that are growing, and there's a huge, vast amount of data that researchers are called to use selectively, depending on what is the research interest and what is the most impactful studies for them. There is difficulty predicting and forecasting lasting future, particularly with this constant change and the technological growth. There is less time and less funding to do more using a great load of information. And again, collaborations is something very, very important. Which industries to approach, what kind of collaborations with other universities will be the most beneficial, and they will fit the research profile of each university and company. Globalization, free information, open science, open data. Clarivate Analytics, probably amongst the research academic community, is more well known for their databases collection. So the database of research papers and journals that they offer to universities for discoveries, for large-scale analysis, for evaluation purposes. But Web of Science is trying to incorporate as many different types of research information for researchers in order to identify again the patterns of scholarly communication. So not only publications in journals, books, and conference proceedings, but in regions as well, but also Data Citation Index, which is a collection of research data, studies, software, and how they are linked with citations, which are very important for certain disciplines. The Derwent Innovation Index, which is the premier data set for patents and inventions, and also open access, as we said, as we're bringing 18 million of open access at the article level in Web of Science to give the possibility to researchers to legally access the full text of all articles that are open access. So here we are. We are more than Web of Science, and we offer a big portfolio of intellectual property science and brand that can be used in order to identify different ways that researchers are using different research data today with life sciences, patent research intelligence systems, trademark and brand protection, and of course intellectual property management systems. So thank you very much for your attention.